This is BYU Sports Nation, brought to you by the BYU Store, simulcast on BYU TV and BYU Radio. Now, from Studio B, here's Spencer Linton and Jarom Jordan.
BYU Sports Nation is live. Your day-to-day play-by-play in Studio B, presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere. Wednesday, October 13th, wherever and however you're connected. Always great to have you with us. I am Spencer Linton, teamed up with the man who is officially petitioning for a Sailor Coug helmet to be included with BYU football.
I am?
Jarom Jordan's the man.
I think that'd be fun. I'm a man. That'd be cool. Baylor busting it out this week. They posted, "Welcome back, Sailor Bear." They've got an old school Sailor Bear as well, which, hey, that looks nice. That's fun. By the way, homecoming, huge deal at Baylor.
Yep.
They claim to be the oldest, homecoming tradition in the country. 1909 had a bonfire and a pep rally and a parade. Homecoming's a big deal. At BYU, I think it's a deal, right? It's a deal.
It's a deal at
I would
most
say it's
schools.
a big deal, but it's a deal.
Yeah.
Okay. This is homecoming spectacular, awesome, but it's not like, this massive, huge event. It's an event. But what if BYU had the Sailor Coug as a helmet? So there are people who have simulated this. At BYU Tracker tweeted, in light of the Sailor Bear, here's the Sailor Coug helmet, what it would look like. I love the Royal one. Navy, not as much. But I think a Sailor Coug helmet in the future could be something. Obviously, BYU's added helmets this year. You don't need to add another one. But maybe next year or the year after that?
Would you go with an official alternate helmet, though? Because while the helmets have been added this year, they're still the Stretch Y. Like, it's still the traditional Stretch Y logo.
Yeah.
Would BYU branch out enough?
We like the Sailor Coug.
And rock a Sailor Coug helmet like Baylor does with the Sailor Bear?
BYU's clearly shown it is up for expansion in the jersey game, in the helmet game. So, I think in the next couple of years, it's a possibility.
Maybe this is a Big 12 reveal. The Sailor Coug helmet.
Well, and it's awesome. Recruits love it. You can sell more merch. It's a win.
This is true.
Yeah.
It's all about making more money.
Just no tan. Just no tan.
How do we make more money? Perhaps it's a good show lineup, which we get to today. Longtime college football insider Brett McMurphy. Are the New Year's Six chances for BYU really out of the question at this point? 5-1, number 19 in the country. The biggest surprise of the BYU football season thus far, plus Puka Nacua in the film room, Boise State's petty promo, and another big jump by a BYU team in the national rankings. Bring on today's BYU Sports Nation headlines.
Number 19, BYU Football prepares for its first out-of-state road game since 2019. How about that? Neutral, doesn't count against Arizona. Head coach Kalani Sitake says BYU may have as many of the injured players available this week, including all three quarterbacks.
Yeah, Jaron's been really good in practice. Baylor's practicing as well. So is Jacob. We'll see how the week goes. A lot of the guys that are banged up are practicing, and we'll have to assess what the best, who will give us the best chance to perform, as an offense and as a defense, the best when we get to the game time.
Okay, interesting. It's not just Jaron automatically.
Okay.
I assumed it was Jaron. Sitake also said Mason Wake and Harris Chance are back in practice, which is great news. Mason Wake, underrated element as a fullback in the run game, and of course, Harris Chance, the right tackle.
I am so glad the fullback is back at BYU, and there's a special place in Kalani Sitake's heart for that fullback position.
Oh, yeah.
How about the Baylor pregame perspective? Bears head coach Dave Aranda says after reviewing game tape, or game files, technically speaking, he knows what Tyler Algier means to this BYU offense.
I think it may start with him. We were just talking just a minute ago. I think it may start with him and just the driver of that attack and the physicality. So he has an 8-yard run, falls forward, gets up off of a linebacker that he just put in the ground. I think that drives the offense.
He's so soft-spoken.
Why is he talking right now?
I don't know, but I kind of like it, and I kind of want to take a nap after I listen to it.
Did he just come out of the ceiling room? What's happening?
BYU at Baylor this Saturday, 3:30 Eastern kickoff. That's 2:30 Central in Waco. Radio pregame begins at 1:30 Mountain Time, 1:30 Eastern on BYU Radio, and countdown to kickoff begins at 2 p.m. Eastern on BYU TV and the app.
Elijah Bryant and the Bucks are in town to face the Jazz tonight. Bryant averaging 12 points a game in preseason so far. He's doing well.
BYU women's soccer up 5 spots to number 15 in the latest United Soccer Coaches poll. The Cougars host Pacific this Saturday night at South Field. Over under 6 goals scored for BYU women's soccer.
Pacific's good, 9-2-2. So
Okay.
I mean, it might actually be a challenge.
Okay, 9 Eastern. Watch on BYUTV.org, the BYU TV app, or listen on BYU Radio.
It'll only be 4-1. Women's golf ranked number 23 in the fall season so far. The Cougars took 5th in the Dale McNamara, no relation to Jerry, Invitational Tuesday. Lila Naliai finished 3rd overall, 3 under. And Anik Hutchkevich finished tied for 4th overall.
You had to bring up Jerry McNamara. I'm still angry about that 43-point
I
performance
was on my
in
mission. I missed
2004.
that. That was a blessing.
Good grief.
9-3, is it?
On the men's golf side, the Cougars finished 12th at the Wolfpack Classic on Tuesday. Carson Lundell shooting even par and finished tied for 11th individually. The Cougars now head to Stockton and California for the Stockton Invitational on October 21st through the 23rd.
Lock your doors.
I knew you were going to say that. All rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending.
You're talking about it, and so are we. It's What's Trending on BYU Sports Nation.
Mid-season superlatives. BYU football 6 games in, 5-1. Still a top 20 team in spite of the loss to Boise State on Saturday. So at the halfway point, Jarom, let's get to it with our mid-season superlatives. Beginning with this, what's the biggest surprise through 6 games for BYU football?
The BYU's 5-1. I would have hoped and dreamed for a 4-2 start, right? But 5-1. The BYU beat Utah. The BYU beat Arizona State, right? Those were some awesome wins. Go up to Logan, take care of business. 5-1, man. Yeah, that's the biggest surprise.
The fact that BYU is 5-1 and have used 3 different quarterbacks already makes that 5-1 start even more surprising. Jaron Hall, Baylor Romney, and Jacob Conover have all played and taken significant snaps this season.
At least a half.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
3 quarterbacks. BYU's 5-1. Had you told me, okay, Spencer, I don't know much about the BYU football season, but I know this much. It's been revealed to me through the Oracle that BYU will use 3 quarterbacks in the first 6 games. I would have told you
BYU
they'll
is
be
2-4
lucky.
or
They'll be
3-3.
lucky to be 3-3.
Yeah.
If they're using 3 quarterbacks, if they're suffering those type of injuries.
Now, another surprise is this, that BYU has won the turnover margin in 5 of 6 games. That is the key to what has happened. Obviously, there are other mitigating circumstances. But to me, the number one reason for why BYU is 5-1 is turnover margin. BYU's done an excellent job of taking care of the ball. In fact, so excellent that on one play where BYU turned it over, they actually got it back. Because Tyler Elgin punched it out. Okay? And that BYU has been able to create some takeaways. So that's been awesome. Obviously, the one game where BYU doesn't, BYU loses. And they did it in a massive way. They were -4. You could argue -6 with the turnover on downs, right? So, yeah, that's been a big surprise. And something that is something you got to look for in the Baylor game is how does BYU do in turnover margin? Baylor has not thrown an interception this year, one of 2 teams to do that. So hopefully BYU can create some turnovers.
Yep, calling Malik Moore. He leads BYU as a safety with those 2 interceptions. Also this, BYU's 5-1, and the one loss is not to Arizona State. It's not to Utah.
And it wasn't to Utah.
But to Boise State. And I love this tweet coming in from @green_DN who says, biggest surprise for me, being 5-1 and a little disappointed.
Right? Well, the expectations changed, right? Once you're 5-0 and ranked 10th. I hope BYU sniffs that again. That'd be great. If BYU finishes, 10-2 in the regular season, they'll be knocking on the door inside the top 15 somewhere.
All right, Jaron, more superlatives. I know how you love them. Best win through 6 games of the 2021 BYU football season.
Utah, ending the streak, clearly. Utah, but the best team that BYU beat was Arizona State. We're going to value that Arizona State win, I think, even more as the season goes on, as Arizona State has success. I hope the Sun Devils win, right? I don't feel the same way for Utah. That's different, right? There's an emotional aspect there. But ending the streak was just so gratifying. I mean, and getting into the Big 12, and that was the same weekend. I mean, September 10th and 11th, just unbelievable moments for BYU. Yeah, best wins Utah, no doubt.
Interesting matchup between Utah and Arizona State this weekend when BYU takes on Baylor. Who are you rooting for?
Arizona State, clearly.
I think BYU fans want Arizona State to continue to win and be ranked, right?
Yeah, for the second place in the Pac-12 South standing.
The best win is clearly Utah. To get, as I called it earlier this week, King Kong off the back of BYU football, you had to beat Utah, and BYU did that. But it looks like right now Arizona State is by far the most talented team that BYU has beaten. So however you want to decide or define best win, emotionally, certainly
it's Utah and then the field.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 3, the best player at the midway point of the season.
Now, not everyone understands me on my take here, but just hear me out. Ryan Rico is the best player on the team. He still is.
I'm not understanding this, so please.
Third, because he's a punter. It's like, well, what? Listen, I'm telling you, the best player at his position is the best player on the team. That's Ryan Rico. He's incredible. Number 3 in punt average right now. Not punting a ton, only punted once on Saturday. But when he has the longest punt in BYU history this year, 83, 13 inside, 7 inside the 20, 13, 50 plus. He's the best player on the team. Like, he's incredible. A close second is Tyler Edge.
Okay, so you have categorized that best player at their position, right? Because that's a little bit of a different window.
Best player, period.
Just best player.
Period. All of it. Ryan Rico is the best player on the team.
Wow.
He's incredible.
Okay, see, I have to go with Tyler Algier because...
Which would be the popular pick. I get it.
Yeah, it is the popular pick, but I think he's earned it, right? I mean, take for example our stat of the day.
It's the BYU Sports Nation stat of the day.
Now, he's not third nationally in his specific position,
That's
but
right.
Tyler Algier is 11th nationally
That's awesome.
in rush touchdowns with 8 and total rush yards, 672.
That's awesome.
Top 11
Amazing.
running back, which I feel like, I don't know, in a roundabout way, because it's a skill position.
Admit it, because he's a punter, it's different.
Yeah, it is different.
Yeah, and I get that. I just don't care.
Because Tyler Algier plays a skill position, and he's the best skill position player for BYU statistically, and however you want to look at it, he's going to get the attention, right?
Yeah.
But I think he's
at a 218.
Also, he has the best play of the season. He saved the game quite literally with that play against Arizona State, and that kind of pushed him over the top for me.
Yeah.
Thinking, BYU didn't have Tyler Algier, and then he doesn't make that play, they lose to Arizona State.
It's easier to quantify a skill position player, certainly. Like, it's hard for me to quantify, hey, you know those times Ryan Rico pinned XYZ ABC teams back and they didn't score on that drive because it was an 83-yard field and not a 58-yard field? That's just not going to pop. I get it. But, yeah, 2 awesome and probably according to Shep, Tyler Algier finally broke out. So he broke out last year.
More Cam Miller's like, hey,
Shep's texting me. Algier broke out.
Include Peyton Wilgar.
Yeah, Peyton's not been as, I guess, flashy as we were hoping for in terms of havoc, but he's extremely solid as a tackler, and he's a leader on the defense, and the defense has been pretty good. So, yeah, no, all good. I want like 10 guys in this conversation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can we agree that the MVP
is Tyler
Algier?
Yeah.
Okay.
Value? Yeah.
Okay, so most valuable player, we agree.
Different than best.
Tyler Algier.
Tyler has been a surprise to me in terms of what he's been able to do against the Power 5 teams, because prior to this season, he had not really had that game against the Power 5 team that was quality where you go, oh, he's legit. He's like NFL guy. He has taken it up a notch this year. He was amazing last year. We saw flashes of brilliance in 2019. Then he got a Scully. Last year he was incredible, 1,100 yards, right? One of the top running backs coming back. He has been above and beyond what I thought he would do this year. He's pacing for 1,000 yards and no problem. It's going to be an NFL career for Tyler. He probably should go after this season.
Okay.
He's awesome, and it's awesome to have Tyler Algier at BYU. I'm very excited for everyone to see his deep blue, by the way, coming up in the next 2 weeks.
Looking forward to that.
The relationship with his grandpa, who passed away of cancer.
All right. Last superlative. What's the biggest question that still needs to be answered with 6 games remaining in the regular season for BYU football?
What's the final record going to be? I'm intrigued because I still think there's at least 1 loss on there, maybe 2. I hope it's not 3. I hope that this team finishes at least 10-3, and then we can put them in the, you know what, because of the 7 Power 5s and the getting over Utah and whatnot.
Special
boom,
season.
This team did something that mattered. It was special because I don't really put 10, well, we've talked about only 1990 is a 3-loss year, I think, where I say that team was special.
Heisman
beat Miami.
Winner, you beat the number 1 team.
But in terms of just winning and rankings and whatnot, yeah, typically you've got to be a 11-plus win team to kind of get into our sort of special category, whatever. This team's special. They really are. Can they finish it off with the amount of wins for us to justify that even better?
Okay, what will the final record be? Certainly quarterback health will play into that. BYU's record against 7 Power 5s. The Cougars have a shot to run the table against the 7 Power 5s.
Got a shot. I don't think it happens, but they got a shot.
Okay, so my biggest question mark is, can BYU sustain their depth through the remainder of the schedule? Feels like Boise State was kind of a result of BYU being beat up through the first 5 games.
Part of it, yeah, sure.
Right? They didn't have Mason Wake. They didn't have Harris LaChance.
Yeah, do you
Jaron Hall's not healthy.
You're not deep. No, but I feel you.
Okay.
If Jaron Hall can run in that game differently, he didn't run much.
Can BYU sustain the depth? All right, our question of the day, and we've already read one of your responses. What is the biggest surprise of the first half of the BYU football season? Let's go to Voice of the Nation.
This is the Voice of the Nation on BYU Sports Nation.
At Justin D. Sweeney on Twitter answers, I have 3. One, that BYU is 5-1, having played 3 different quarterbacks.
Yep.
If you told me preseason BYU would play 3 quarterbacks by game 6, I'd say our record was 3-3 at best.
Yep.
Maybe even 2-4.
Yep.
Number 2, that BYU are the Pac-12 South champions without being in the Pac-12. Okay?
Still one more game to win the ship.
Got to take care of USC.
One more game.
Number 3, that Isaac Rex only has 9 catches for 83 yards halfway through the year. Now, keep in mind, Isaac Rex had a very slow start to his season in 2020, even with Zach Wilson.
And there are more weapons this year.
Maybe he turns it on. And yes, there is a wealth of weapons.
No way he was going to replicate last year.
12 touchdowns.
There was no way. Okay? There's too many options at receiver, and that's okay, man. Okay, coming up, what Boise State did this week to celebrate the BYU win.
And longtime college football insider and expert friend of the program, Brett McMurphy, joins us live to discuss if BYU football's New Year's 6 chances are indeed dead after the Boise State loss. This is BYU Sports Nation.
I don't think so. What does Brett think?
Hi, Spencer Linton here, letting you know when your company joins the BYU team as a corporate partner, your brand can be featured in sports programming on BYU TV and BYU Radio. In addition to all of the great games, you can be part of the BYU coaches shows, place your message in Countdown to Kickoff, basketball pre- and post-game shows, and each weekday on BYU Sports Nation. We invite your team to join ours and become a corporate sponsor of BYU Athletics. For details, email sponsorship@byu.edu today.
On the basic level, we offer transportation. We carry 4 wheels, tailgates, and a place to rest your rump. Beyond that, we provide adventures, opportunities, and jobs well done. So perhaps our favorite offering is our full line of trucks, including the new Nissan Titan. Right off I-15, Tim Daly Nissan Southtown and the popular full-size Nissan Titan. Think Nissan. Think Tim Daly.
When BYU made such a difference in our lives, I think really helped mold us as to who we are. And so when we had that opportunity and came back to Boise and found out there was an active chapter, we thought, okay, that's something that I can really get behind and get involved in.
We want to promote the BYU experience all over the region. We want people who leave BYU to still stay connected.
This is BYU Football with Kalani Sitake and Greg Wrubell.
When I was younger, I was a better dancer. Don't show any more dancing. Yeah, okay, good. I think we've developed some really good habits the last couple of weeks and looking to step it up again. A lot of great things can happen when they carry.
Not bad. That's good stuff.
Hey.
Yay.
Yeah, thank you for ending on that one. That was a good one.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
BYU Football with Kalani Sitake is available on the BYU TV app on demand. Join Greg Wrubell and seeing the coach look back at the Boise State game ahead to the big game with Baylor. Player guest Atunaisa Mahe was on the program. The Deep Blue featuring the Nacua brothers and their relationship with their dad. And Puka Nacua was in the film room.
We are live in Studio B. This is your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I'm Spencer Linton, teamed up with Jarom Jordan. Joining us now from the Action Network, longtime college football insider and expert, Brett McMurphy returns to BYU Sports Nation. Brett, great to have you back on the program. How are you?
Good to be with you guys again. Hope you're doing well.
We're doing well
Hey,
because
we're
for
doing
the first
great.
time ever,
We're not going to ask you about expansion
we
this
will
time.
not talk about Big 12 expansion because it's happened, Brett. Yeah, BYU's headed to the Big 12 in 2023. We would love to hear how you feel BYU will fit in that new Big 12.
I think it's going to be great. I mean, I was wondering why you guys don't call me anymore. Now I know why. now that you're a big time power conference, you don't have time for me. No, it's great. And this year is a perfect example what the Big 12 will mean to BYU and how BYU will benefit. As you guys know, I do my bowl projections. I had BYU in the Fiesta Bowl while you were undefeated, but now with one loss, I don't see you getting a New Year's Six game, and so that means you'll end up in the Independence Bowl, whether you're 11-1 or 6-6. However, if you're in the Big 12 Conference and you roll out an 11-1 season, you're still in the running not only for a New Year's Six game, but for the conference championship. And if you win the conference championship, obviously in the Big 12, you're going to go at worst to the Sugar Bowl. So I think that's going to be the biggest difference for BYU being in the Big 12, and it's going to pay huge dividends. I haven't talked with anybody on campus there since the move happened, but I'm sure recruiting wise, it's got to be just a huge difference and such an added benefit for Kalani and everybody there. So that's the great news. The bad news is you still got a couple of years to go, but certainly things I'm hearing with UCF and Houston and Cincinnati and their recruiting efforts. It's obviously a huge benefit for the Cougars.
Brett, we go on 2-year missions. We know how to wait. This is is just one of those. We'll be just fine. Regarding recruiting, 2 4-stars have committed to BYU since the news. So yes, it has certainly affected BYU. BYU gets kind of 1 4-star class, maybe every other class. So that's big news. Regarding BYU and the New Year's Six, let's say BYU runs the table in the back half of the schedule and wins 6 in a row, including Baylor, Washington State, Virginia, USC. Now, they certainly may not be in the New Year's Six, but do you think they'll be a strong candidate at 11-1 despite the 1 loss with 7 Power 5 wins in that scenario?
Well, here's the deal. And this is, again, I preface this with, this is not what I think. This is what I think the selection committee will do. The selection committee will look at it, and to be in a New Year's Six game, you're going to have to probably finish in the top 12 in the country. It's not definitive. It depends on a number of things, but you got to be in that top 12 range. So the selection committee, why I don't think that the selection committee would put you in the top 12 with all of those Power 5 wins, you would only have 1 win against the top 25 team, and that's Arizona State. And that's if Arizona State remains in the top 25. If they fall out of the top 25, it doesn't matter what the ranking was when the game was played. It matters what the ranking is at the end of the season. So then you would have no top 25 wins. So even with that said, yeah, you'd still have 7 Power 5 victories. However, the schools that you would be competing against as far as the rankings, look, the committee is not going to put 11-1 BYU ahead of 2-loss Alabama. They're not going to put them ahead of 1-loss Iowa, 2-loss Ohio State, 2-loss Penn State, because those schools, which BYU will find out in a couple of years when they're in the Big 12, those schools will have multiple top 25 victories, and their losses, with a few exceptions, will be against teams that are in the top 25. Obviously, Alabama's lost to Texas A&M. Texas A&M may fall out of the top 25. So I just think it's going to be difficult for BYU to climb. They're currently number 19 in the AP poll. It doesn't mean the selection committee would put them at 19 now. They may put them higher. They may put them lower. I just think it's going to be tough for them to – there's a lot of bodies they got to climb over. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of upsets. But I think it's just going to be hard for them to get up into that top 12 range for the selection committee to put them in a New Year's Six game. I may be wrong. I just think the other schools that they'll be competing against will have more top 25 wins, and that's what the selection committee gives the most weight to.
Follow him at Brett_McMurphy on Twitter, Action Network, College Football Insider, and a longtime college football expert.
America's college football insider.
Yes.
Right,
okay.
Brett? Right?
We're still trying to clarify if it's North America or South America, but
all of it.
That's true.
Fair enough. Okay, Brett, so just to clarify, for the BYU fan, for the Cougars to have any shot at being in that conversation, you're telling me that Arizona State needs to keep winning, remain ranked, and if
Baylor
BYU
would have to keep going.
Yes, if BYU beats Baylor, then Baylor's going to have to do well in the Big 12, right? We're looking for quality wins on that resume.
Yes, that's the trick. Any opponent you play, you want to beat them, like Utah, and then you want them to win the rest of their games. So, certainly that would help increase your chances. I mean, look, USC, I did a note the other day, USC, they may not even be bowl eligible this year. They may not get the 6 wins. Same with LSU and Miami. I know you don't play those guys. But, yeah, you need Arizona State to run the table. I mean, look, if Arizona State wins the Pac-12, which is still possible, that certainly would help BYU's resume. Again, the challenge for BYU is you would only have that one top 25 win,
right,
unless somebody in your schedule somehow gets up into that top 25, which I don't project right now.
Well, Spencer yesterday mentioned, listen, if BYU's not in the New Year's Six, if that's not possible, which, yes, BYU's going to be an outsider in that conversation. What you said makes sense. It really does, against the 2-loss Titans of the sport. Then somehow, I know the Independence Bowl is Conference USA, and then there's actually this thing where maybe BYU could be in the Cheez-It Bowl, now called the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, Big 10, Big 12, if they can't fill a spot, blah, blah, blah. Somehow, let's get Coastal and BYU.
Yes, please, Brett. Make Coastal Carolina BYU happen.
Get Coastal and BYU, because even if Cincy loses a game, it feels like due to the strength of schedule for the Bearcats that Cincy probably still could be the Group of 5 team, right, should they win their league. So let's get a Coastal BYU game. Are you in favor of this?
I'm in favor of this. The good news is, look, this year, in the next 5 years, the final 5 years of the college football playoff, as far as the non-Power 5 bowl games, which obviously BYU has their affiliation with the Independents this year and other bowls moving forward till they go to the Big 12. It's basically, you can't just say, for instance, the Independence Bowl is 100% BYU versus Conference USA. There's this about a dozen bowls where they will pick from all the Group 5 conferences. So there's going to be a lot of horse trading. So even though some conferences and or schools supposedly have tie-ins with specific bowl games affiliated with Group of 5 schools, it could totally be mixed around, and you could have these made for TV matchups or whatever to make more attractive matchups, and just disregard any conference affiliations that we've seen in the past. That's what's made doing these bowl projections each week literally impossible to do, because once you get through the Power 5 is very specific. This conference versus this conference in this bowl. Once you get past those Power 5 only bowls and you get into the rest of the bowls, I mean, I'm being totally serious. Like the American, for example, they have 7 bowl bids tied to their conference. 3 of them are specific that they will play in specific bowl games. The other 4 bowl games are to be determined among 12 bowls. And the same goes with Conference USA, with the Sun Belt, the MAC, etc. So you've got this mixture of 12 to 14 bowl games that can pick from any Group 5 conference. So that means, I think, that maybe BYU, if they could trade with the Independents to get somebody else in somewhere else, then maybe they could move BYU somewhere else. Look, the more BYU wins, and look, if they go 11-1, I think that increases the chances that they could maybe be put in a different bowl. But certainly if they lose, if they're down to 9-3, 8-4, something like that, then I think that the chances greatly increase that they would remain in the Independents.
Brett McMurphy is on BYU Sports Nation. Brett, I know you're an Oklahoma State grad, and I'm always fascinated to talk to national analysts when their school and what they're part of an alumni base in are doing well. How do you balance being an Oklahoma State fan and still trying to call or see college football with an unbiased perspective?
I'm probably harder on Oklahoma State than I am other schools. I guess it's kind of like if you're coaching your kid. you don't want to show favoritism to them. I know in the AP poll, all of our votes are public. I put mine out on Twitter and then close my laptop for the next 24 hours. But I've had Oklahoma State ranked lower probably than the majority of AP voters. And part of that, it's not to be like, oh, I'm showing I'm unbiased, but to be very, very honest, Oklahoma State's 5-0 right now. They could also very easily be 2-3 right now. I mean, Boise State, they won because of an inadvertent whistle. Kansas State, they had a defensive touchdown. Baylor, they scored late. They squeaked by Missouri State in the opener. Tulsa was they've basically been involved in 5 one-score games, and those things, are coin flips. So that's why I've had Oklahoma State a little bit further down. Look, in 2 weeks, they went. Somebody had Oklahoma State ranked, I think, 5th or 6th in the AP poll. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm an alum of Oklahoma State. I can't even fathom that. Look, they've got at Texas, at Iowa State the next 2 weeks. If they win those 2 games, I think they should be in the top 10. How far up? There's so many factors involved in that. But, I just if I think they're good, then I'll say they're good. If I think they're bad, I'll say they're bad. And I think when you do that, over a long period of time, I think people respect your opinion more instead of always just beating the drum saying, oh, everything's great. Everything's great. And I don't know if you guys are a fan of Young Frankenstein. I love that movie, but he's like, it could get worse. And he's digging a grave, and he's how's that? And he goes, well, it could start raining. So I'm not going to tell you it's sunshine when it's pouring outside. I just try to be, as objective as I can. And look, I know everybody agrees with my rankings 100%, so I have nothing to worry about.
Brett McMurphy's on BYU Sports Nation. We'll finish with this, Brett. We've been talking about the biggest surprises specific to the BYU football season through 6 games, the midway point. Let's get your overall take. What's the biggest surprise of the entire college football season at the midway point?
Well, I guess if you had asked me last week, I would have said how dominant Georgia and Alabama have been this year. And now you're asking me this week, so I'll say how dominant Georgia has been. I thought Georgia was a college football playoff team before the season. I didn't think they would be this dominant. And especially, and BYU fans can know this feeling, they've had some issues at quarterback. They've had injuries. They've played multiple quarterbacks. It hasn't mattered. The defense has been that good. Now, you could argue that, they haven't played the greatest offensive juggernauts to this point, but they just have dominated people and surprised a lot of people. I mean, Georgia right now would be favored in a game against Alabama if they meet in the SEC title game. So probably Georgia, and probably real quickly, the other thing is probably the overall depth and quality at the top of the Big Ten. I did not expect Michigan State to be in this position. I did not expect Michigan to be in this position. Obviously, Ohio State, surprised by the loss to Oregon. I mean, Iowa, they may have 2 yards of offense, but they're going to create 7 turnovers and they're going to win, 16-0 on 8 safeties. So they've been incredible. And Penn State has been, obviously they lost their quarterback, Sean Clifford. That could hurt them long term. But the overall depth of the Big Ten, has really, really surprised me. And also, real quickly about BYU, I mean, look, with the opening 3 games BYU had, I didn't expect BYU to be undefeated. Certainly the loss to Boise was, BYU fans didn't like that. But I think if you take a step back, and if you would have said before the season, at the halfway point of the year, we're going to be 5-1, I think, obviously outside of the building, they want to be 6-0. I think most rational BYU fans would have said, I'll take it. Now, you wouldn't have expected that loss to be to Boise. You probably would have thought it would have been against one of the Power Fives, except for Arizona. So, yeah, especially with the injuries BYU's had at quarterback, I would put BYU as one of the surprise teams up there. Unfortunately, they're going to get overshadowed because Cincinnati's undefeated and beat Indiana and Notre Dame. And I said this, I hope you guys saw it a week or 2 ago, when everybody was clamoring that Cincinnati has to be in the playoff. Cincinnati has to be in the playoff. I'm like, wait, what about BYU? BYU goes undefeated. That's 7 Power 5 wins. Cincinnati has 2. And I like to say, if you just fell out of the sky onto earth before this season and didn't know the past about the Group 5, and you just looked at Cincinnati and what they've accomplished this year, I don't think they're a playoff-worthy team based on that schedule. Everyone wants to say, well, the Group 5 has been screwed for 7 years, so we need to make up for it. Whatever, that's a different argument. I'm just saying, based on this season alone, I don't think Cincinnati undefeated will get in over a one-loss Power 5 team. But what irked me is that everyone just kind of dismissed BYU. You know, why not BYU? They obviously, the Boise loss killed them, but 5 more Power 5 wins against than Cincinnati, and they would have had as many top 25 wins as Cincinnati. And at the end of the year, I think Arizona State's probably going to be ranked higher than Notre Dame.
Yeah, hard to argue that. They look really good. Brett, we appreciate the insight, the time. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Great to be a member of the Big 12 with the Oklahoma State Cowboys in 2023. And we look forward to your next perfect set of rankings released this Sunday.
Tell Mr. Tom Homo I'm still waiting for my parade invite for that Big 12 parade. So
you got it.
How to track me down.
We'll pass that along. Thanks so much, Brett.
Thanks, guys.
Brett McMurphy of the Action Network. Follow him at Brett_McMurphy for more fantastic college football content.
So we didn't like BYU's resume for the New Year's Six, but he loved it possibly against Cincinnati. So that's
if they're undefeated.
If they're at 11-1 versus 12-0.
Right, and to his point, BYU does need teams to perform well to bolster the resume if they want to be in that New Year's Six.
I still believe BYU's going to lose, so I'm not in on that anymore. Okay, coming up, I go with Puka Nacua to the film room.
And is it time for Zach Wilson to stop overthinking things? And what's he doing during the bye week? This is BYU Sports Nation.
Professor Rock here.
The Food Nanny.
Chandler Scott here.
Samry. Hey, everyone.
Hello.
I just want to tell you about this amazing,
excellent, cool account called My Style.
My Style checking. I'm talking travel points.
Gift card. Concert tickets.
All just for using my account. That's My Style.
So check it out.
Give it a shot. Open your My Style checking account today.
Family, if you're looking for something new to watch, stop scrolling and start streaming. BYU TV has a ton of great options to binge together. From bold adventure to family drama and even a little fun, there's something for everyone. Binge entire series, experience all the feels, immerse in non-stop intrigue, and treat yourself to unexpected turns. Think you know BYU TV? We're just getting started.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Visible Supply Chain Management.
If you like watching a lot of goals, then you are a fan of BYU women's soccer.
Yep.
Automatically. Saturday night, number 15 BYU. Back in the rankings, climbing up, baby. Host number, 9-2-2 Pacific. Unranked, but good. 9 Eastern on the BYU TV app Saturday night.
Well, listen, BYU hosted at the time 7-2-1 St. Mary's and put up 7 goals on them.
Number 16 Gonzaga on the road. 6-1.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Don't put it past the ladies to do something special again
Joey
on
Lawrence
Saturday
was
night.
like, whoa!
Yeah. He is Jarom. I'm Spencer. This is BYU Sports Nation. To interact with the show and get content throughout the day, you can follow us on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Let's whip it! The Cougar Whip Around presented by Visible Supply Chain Management, tackling America's most challenging shipping problems.
Brother Big Game Boomer has Baylor on upset alert. Would it be an upset if number 19 BYU beat unranked Baylor?
Sure. If our friends in the desert say that BYU is anywhere from a 5 to a 6-point underdog.
6.5 now.
That's now 6.5. See, they're going all in on the quarterback scenario. BYU losing to Boise State. Could the Cougars have something up their sleeve that could surprise the friends in the desert? Yes, it would be an upset. I know that BYU is number 19 in the country. Baylor's a few spots out of the top 25, but this is homecoming in Waco. Big deal. Baylor should be expected to win this game based on what has happened recently. It would be an upset.
Recently, like last week? Is that what you're
yeah,
referring to?
45-20 over West Virginia. BYU loses to Boise State.
The line swung from 1.5 for BYU to 6.5. That's a crazy swing in 1 week.
Sure.
This is 2015 Michigan vibes. BYU was a ranked team going on the road, unranked, but good Power 5 team. I believe BYU will cross the 50 more than once, which is good news. But I am concerned about this matchup. I really am. I think BYU's really got to bring it to win this.
Well, the last time BYU faced a Dave Aranda team,
2017 LSU, didn't cross the 50.
Well, there you go.
So that's the deal.
Okay, and maybe this is BYU doing to Baylor what Boise did to BYU, because the line swung heavily in favor of BYU going into the Boise State game.
I hear you on Vegas. That's technically an upset, but number 19 versus unranked, barely out, is interesting.
All right.
Being that big of a dog as a ranked team?
Boise State, capitalizing on their 26-17 win in Provo over BYU, is now offering tickets for the final 3 home games for $26.17 to commemorate that 9-point win against number 10 BYU last Saturday. Jarom, do you applaud this effort, or does it make you angry at Boise State?
No, it's funny. That's funny. Well done. You earned it. You got it. That's hilarious.
It's a petty promotion.
If Utah did this, I'd be angry. But it's Boise State. I'm like, whatever. It's all good.
It's petty. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, mostly. You know, it hurts. The sting is real. It adds some extra sting. But it's well played on Boise State's promotions part.
BYU scored too many points last year on the blue, 51-17, to offer that same deal. That's twice the price. Zach Wilson says it's time to stop thinking and let it rip. Is this a good idea?
If it makes him play better, sure. Yeah, I'm in favor of whatever Zach Wilson needs to do mentally to get to a place where he starts to perform more consistently.
Is it him mentally, the issue? I think it's the O-line.
Or is it the offensive line? Or is it a billion things?
It's a billion things. He does have 9 picks in 5 games. This isn't the Zach we know, right? But the Jets suck. I hope he can overcome the Jets. That's my biggest concern, is can Zach overcome the Jets?
I think he's shown flashes of brilliance, but
yeah, totally.
There are still concerns for sure. He's spending the bye week flying home and working with his private quarterback tutor, John Beck.
Heard of him.
Hope that helps a little bit.
Can he play here?
Jarom, former NBA player J.R. Smith played his first collegiate golf tournament for North Carolina A&T as a freshman walk-on recently. This week, Smith pulled his car wheel over a hornet's nest on the golf course. You don't want to drive your golf cart over a hornet's nest. What's the worst thing that's happened to you on a golf course?
My play is number one, but another time, my brother-in-law Tommy and I, he hit a tree that kind of rattled a hornet's nest one time, and his clubs, he ends up kind of walking up not realizing it, parks his clubs there. It takes us an hour to talk to neighbors on the course. We kind of get a hook around it, drag it back. One time he said, I'm just going to go in. I was like, do not do this.
No, bad decision.
You might die.
I thought
he
you were
did, but
I thought you were going to say the time you accidentally hit Ben Bagley with a golf ball on the golf course.
We're in St. George. I'm hitting an approach shot. I go right off the chest of Ben Bagley, and it aids it a few feet closer to the hole. So I would like to personally thank Ben Bagley again for what I think I just tapped in at that point.
Yeah. Mine's not horrible, more just funny and embarrassing. I was playing golf with a close friend, and you know those sticks in the middle of the course that signify 150 yards out from the green?
Yeah.
They're black and white stripe. Yeah. I was like directly in front of it, and I was like, I'm good. I'll hit it around it. I'll be just fine. I take a swing and hit my golf ball dead smack into this super thin stick in the middle of the fairway, and it snaps in half. And the golf course marshal is watching on the left side and just starts laughing. And I was like, do I need to buy you a new 150-yard marker stick? He's like, no, don't worry about it. We can afford that.
I hit a tree twice in a row, like the same tree. It's like, oh, gosh. Okay, Utah men's basketball, 10th in the Pac-12 media poll. This just came out a few minutes ago. Are you surprised by that?
No, they have a new coach. They did not have a great season last year. This seems like par for the course.
Nice. Golf pun. I think that Craig Smith is going to make sure they're not.
Oh, they'll be better.
I'm afraid of Utah men's hoops in the next couple of years being way better than they have been because Craig Smith's a good coach.
Even though Craig Smith has never beaten BYU?
Yeah, he was at Utah State.
Okay, now he's at Utah.
He's going to be able to get different kinds of players. Yeah. Okay, coming up, crossing the rivalry and doing good through barbecue.
And Puka Nacua joins Jarom Jordan in the film room. Why does he always have a smile on his face? This is BYU Sports Nation.
BYU Food2go's convenient location at 2191 North Canyon Road in Provo makes bringing popular BYU foods to your next event easy. Everything's ready when you need it at the drive and load pickup. You drive in and they load no matter the weather. And stop in the on-site creamery for great BYU chocolate milk and ice cream. BYU Food2go, bringing campus to your table. Call for details, 801-422-5001.
Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork offers a large inventory of Ford vehicles, including a selection of cars and trucks, providing a range of transportation choices. From the Ford Fusion sedan and the Edge crossover SUV to a range of pickups including the F-150. Each product line comes with options to enhance performance, comfort, and safety. Think Ford, think Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork.
I know what it's like to be overlooked, to be doubted, to fly under the radar. I only had one offer coming out of high school, but I was ready for every moment, every opportunity, and every shot that I got. Now I'm playing professional basketball, aiming to be one of the best shooters on the planet. And I'm just getting started. Be ready for your moment with Rapid Reboot, the future of rapid recovery.
Let's kick off AFR on BYU TV.
What they did in that fourth quarter was not unexpected in my book.
Everyone did their job perfectly, and it resulted in, obviously, a touchdown.
Who knew that he had these kind of hands?
And right at the snap of the football, they both go right downhill. And that was the end of that. He knocked him down pretty quickly.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
Listen to complete coverage of the 19th ranked BYU Cougars at Baylor game this weekend, Saturday, Cougar pregame live at 1:30 Eastern with Jason-born Identity Shepherd following Greg Wrubell, Riley Nelson out the call in the game with Mitch Juergens on BYU Radio. And
his doppelganger really is Matt Damon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it. Welcome back to BYU Sports Nation live from Studio B. Jarom, you recently had a chance to speak with one of the happiest guys you will ever meet that has played at BYU football.
Yeah, he's great. Puka Nacua, invited me into the film room. I don't take him in. He takes me in. That's their turf, right? I'm an outsider. But super fun. What happened against Boise State? Why is he always smiling? This and more answered in this week's film room. All right, Puka, obviously first loss of the season. How have you and the guys taken it?
It's definitely an interesting one. One you never want to lose any game, but we got a good group of guys and everybody's going to rally the troops and we'll get ready to go again on Saturday.
Okay, let's highlight some of the good plays from this one. You had 4 catches for 75 yards, the first of which is on the second drive, 37 yards, a one-hander here.
Here I was like, all right, I got to fight for outside. I just kept going, and by the time I put my head up, I seen Jaron look back my way, and I was like, all right, here we go. It's game time right here. We were hand-fighting the whole way down the field, but as soon as I put my left arm out, it kind of stuck right, too. It just fell right at the ones downfield are for sure the best. You see the little head slap after, so it gets me going, make sure I get the juice still on me.
So the catch wasn't enough. You had to slap your own head.
Yeah, and, yeah, definitely. It always gets me going, makes me sure I'm awake.
Hey, you're awake, you get the fans awake. Let's look at Sampson's touchdown. This is a you got mossed moment, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm thinking like I have potential to be in this play. I knew the corner was gonna have off, and we go, and I look back, and I look at Jaron throw the ball up into the back of the end zone. Like I'm like, oh shoot, and I just turn around and there's Sampson right there. And as soon as he came, I was instant. I just started screaming. Like, he has a celebration, and then I punched him right here too. And make make sure he was feeling good, make sure he's awake too, because oh man, that was fun to see. It's a movie when you're out there with your brother and he makes those plays.
That's awesome, man. Okay, third quarter, you have a jet sweep for 16 yards. This is something BYU's been doing with you, but this was the best one yet.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. We run it around. We do some to set up our deep action shots, but this one was fun. Knowing that I got 3 guys right here, I got Isaac, Dallin, and Tyler right here, so I'm pretty confident as I'm running the motion. Everybody picked up their blocks. I saw the opening, and to be able to get a first down and kind of get us out of our own territory was nice.
Okay, and then the last play, 17 yards on the next snap.
Yeah, a little bit gas here, but we hit him with some tempo right here, I think. I have another go route, but this is not the same coverage that they gave us in the boundary last time, so he's bailing out and making it easy access, and I look back, and Jaron, we made eye contact, and he threw me right back there, put it on a rope, make it easy, and then hit another first down to start this drive off and continue to go forward. But
you've always got a smile on your face. Where does that come from?
I definitely say my mom and my dad. My mom always has a picture of me and my dad when we were little, and she says we're the Buddha. We look like Buddha. He just has a big smile on my face. I was a young fat baby. That's actually where the Puka, the nickname, comes from in Samoan. It means chubby. So it was a family nickname that's kind of stuck out, and it's always better when you have a smile. Even through the hard days and the rainy days, if you smile, something will turn your way, that's for sure.
I love that good attitude. Okay, and a big game coming up Saturday. You're back at it in Waco against Baylor, future Big 12 brother there, but yeah. Huge game.
It'll be a fun one. I'm excited. I mean, every game is just like the one you want to go out there and get, and I know the guys are going to be ready after a loss. It'll be they got a good team too, so it'll be fun. We should get some hot weather out there, right?
It should be warm, right?
So,
in Waco?
Yeah, that'll make it fun. We get another day game, so it'll always be fun. But I can't wait to go out there in Texas, and it'll be nice to get a pre-taste of what it's like.
That's right. That's right. Okay, Chubby, thanks for the time, man. Puka Nacua, Samoan for Chubby, you know? Someone tweeted me, they're like, I'm surprised he didn't punch you after that. He's a nice guy. No, he's a tremendous addition, and you're going to see Deep Blue coming up later this week on the show. If you haven't already, you can see it on social media. It aired on the Satake show, but 15 catches, 276 yards, team leading 18.4 yards gets. He's getting down the field.
He's averaging the ball.
He's averaging 9 yards per rush, by the way, on 4 carries. Obviously, the human element of what they mean to be back here. Be back meaning living in Orem the last couple of years after moving from Las Vegas, but just awesome emotional additions, and then obviously physically on the field.
I don't think people understand until you're up close to him just how big and physical and athletic he is as a receiver.
Yes. Kalani Stakis said Puka is one of the most athletic receivers BYU's ever had.
It is such a boost to that BYU wide receiver core to have the Nacua brothers.
And the energy they bring.
And I love that his mom said at the start of the Deep Blue feature, when he was a baby, almost 1 year old, he just looked like a bald, big, fat Buddha.
He talked about it there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that she brought that up in Deep Blue as well. It was really funny.
And he was chubby, so it was an appropriate nickname. You know who else was? Jimmer Fredette. That dude was chubby till he's 12, and then whatever. It's all good. There's a place for everybody, whether you're chubby or not. Who cares? Coming up, your biggest surprise from the first half of the season.
And rise and shout out to a close friend of the program doing some good to bring in the rivalry to a friendly state. This is BYU Sports Nation.
Quick crack. Wash all you want. Don't drive dirty.
Familiar with the BYU TV app? Yes.
I beg your pardon?
Sure, it's got great original TV shows. But it also gives you access to family films for free.
Wow. Awesome!
So gather around, grab some popcorn, and let us do the rest.
It'll be fun.
Watch some of your favorite films anytime, anywhere. With the free BYU TV app.
I like it.
This is BYU Football with Kalani Sitake and Greg Wrubell.
When I was younger, I was a better dancer. Don't show any more dancing. Yeah, okay, good. I think we've developed some really good habits the last couple of weeks and looking to step it up again. A lot of great things can happen when they care.
Not bad. That's good stuff.
Hey. Yeah, thank you for ending on that one. That was a good one.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics.
BYU Sports Nation always available on demand via the BYU TV and BYU radio apps.
Or download the podcast. You can listen to it on 1.5 speed or 0.5 speed. That's really fun.
Define fun. Our question of the day: what is the biggest surprise of the first half of the BYU football season in 2021? At BYU_4_ever on Twitter answers, off the field news. I was excited and optimistic about the season, but the Big 12 name, image, likeness, and recruiting news has been totally unexpected and totally awesome. I also didn't expect to be so pumped to see BYU's punter come on. I actually get excited to see what Ryan Rico is going to do.
Best player on the team, man. He's amazing. He really is.
Really? Not Tyler? Go back and listen to the show.
Yeah.
In response, our elite voice of the day, presented by Sundance Mountain Resort at Playoff Bogey, answers, is all of it an option? Big 12 invite, win versus Utah, 5-1 record, 3-0 against Power Fives, Superman punch for the win from Tyler Algier, and the loss versus Boise State, also very surprising. It's been an amazing ride. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, surprised. Yes, exactly.
Today's Rise and Shout Out presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics. Our guy Cam True and Bam Bam's Barbecue doing something very special this weekend.
Yes, so he's teaming up with Utah Pig Bus, which is basically the Cam True equivalent at Utah. They're friends, to bring the community together to celebrate the life of Aaron Lowe and Ty Jordan during the Arizona State tailgate.
Love
so there's
this.
more information. You can go look online. I know I've retweeted it. You've probably retweeted it as well. Go check it out. That's a really cool cause. For Cam to participate with Utah now.
I'll send it out again. And he wants BYU fans there in BYU gear. Looking for at least 100 BYU fans to show up all blue so that they see BYU fans supporting this cause at the Utah game. Yeah. That's the point. Let's bring the rivalry madness a little bit closer together.
Kalani Sitake mentioned, we'll see who gives us the best shot. Did he open the door on accident to a quarterback discussion there? Because I'm assuming Jaren Hall's the starter unless he's hurt, right? But if Baylor's healthy and Jaren can't run as much, is Baylor a better option? But the question is Baylor healthy? Typically, concussion depends on the severity. Someone's going to take multiple weeks to get back.
Yeah.
So if Baylor's back this week, that'd be great. I'd be a little surprised, frankly.
Hopefully, Jaren Hall can do what Aaron Roderick said they would do. Let it rip, let it loose, and he runs.
Yeah, let's go.
Our thanks to today's guests, Brett McMurphy and Puka Nacua in the film room.
Sorry to Dennis Pitta. We ran out of time. Conversation continues 24/7 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Use the hashtag BYUSN.
For Jarom Jordan, I'm Spencer Linton. Shout out to Aaron Cupp. We'll see you tomorrow for BYU Sports Nation. I'll be in Waco.
Yeah, dude.
You gonna hang out? You coming in?
Coming into what? To Waco?
Do the show.
I wish.
Here.
I'll be here.
Holding down the fort. All right.
No Waco.
Go Cougs.
Magnolia Lane, University.